Echoes Hue. Audio Productions. Smooth, sweet sounds. Echoes Hue Audio Productions proudly presents a J.S. Mensah audio work.
Hi everybody, and welcome to my brand new podcast, Would You Adam and Eve It, with me, Del McCamley. Keep up to date with content from Echoes Hue Audio Productions by following us on TikTok, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget to follow, like and comment. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be talking about issues that affect us all on a national, local and global level. As the famous Blues Brothers once said, issues that affect you, me, them, everybody. Because everybody needs somebody. Somebody to love, miss and kiss and keep you all clued up as just what the hell is going on out there. Because if I don't tell you, then nobody will. Definitely not any of our competitors. So sit back, kick back, relax, grab yourself a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, glass of whiskey, glass of vodka. Oh, glass of whiskey, glass of vodka? What the hell? Who starts drinking at this time of the day? What? My producer just said everybody. No, man, that's not true. Not everybody. Anyway, just relax and know that Del is going to get in there and wiggle and jiggle out the workings of just what the heck is going on in that jolly game we call life. You know it makes sense. So stick with me. I'll put you right. Okay, moving on. Ever wondered why your local services are shutting down, such as libraries, swimming pools, bus services, youth clubs, centres, school services, care for the elderly, public toilets, to name but a few? I mean, care for the elderly, public toilets and schools? That should be the top priority of any public realm of spending. Everywhere you go, you're seeing places closed down all the time. I see it on my high street. I see it when I go to other cities. When I go around the whole of Britain, I see places being closed down. Even our own heritage is under threat, with museums getting boarded up and turned into flats. In fact, it seems as if anything that gets closed down, anything that offers an indispensable lifeline for communities and society as a whole to operate in a healthy, advantageous, fair and balanced state of well-being, gets crushed and trodden flat under a bulldozer and turned into luxury apartments or flats. So, how did this nonsense happen? What's more, who's to blame? It all started when Dizzy Just Call Me Dave Cameron and Nick Clegg held hands and skipped in front of the cameras in 2010, declaring they were in love and formed the Conservative Lib Dem coalition. This was swiftly followed by an austerity programme that rapidly turned into something out of a slasher movie, with major city councils such as Nottingham and Birmingham running from the showers as the blood flowed. And I don't care what anyone thinks, but when the Chancellor at the time, George, we're all in this together, Osborne, slashed public youth services and recreational facilities, he systematically wrecked most of the chances of our young people living in deprived areas, and that's a fact. Since then, Birmingham, the largest council in Europe, and not just the UK, but Europe, has voted to try to rake its council tax up by 21% over the next 2 years, sacrificing 600 jobs in the process. They've even gone so far as to reducing the wattage thrown out by their street lamps at night. Poor street lighting. Some of you might argue that, with certain areas in cities in the UK, this might actually make the streets look better. But I say nay, nay and thrice nay. Caught up in the subsequent shockwaves from 2010 are Northamptonshire, Thurrock, Northumberland, Croydon and Slough, with 20 more councils trembling and quaking before the eye of the storm. This threw up an avalanche of absolute calamities, which included the following. In Birmingham, an equal pay claim that was left on the shelf to putrefy and rot is now costing the council a massive £1.15 billion. Croydon Council went about setting up its own housing development company, which folded like a pack of cards, tossing 41 housing schemes onto the monetary scrap heap, terminating them all or selling them on. Woking Council in Surrey committed economic suicide by rushing up £2 billion of debt on an unadulterated property investment binge in hotels and high-rise flats. Disgraceful. In Thurrock, the Tory-led council went broke in 2022 after making unhinged bets on crackpot schemes, such as throwing away tens of millions into solar farms in places like Wiltshire. This left the town absolutely skint and the private investors involved gathering up the dosh. As usual, the ordinary person on the street suffers. That's you and me, folks, struggling through yet another set of injustices while the wealthy and powerful sit back and scoop up huge swathes of cream. Lovely jubbly. I use the word outrageous because parking permits for nurses and carers have also gone up. I use the word outrageous because there's even been a price hike on Thurrock's dead, with the cost of burials going up 9%. The good news for Thurrock Council is the Tories have given them a whopping £635 million bailout. The bad news is it will take them over 20 years to be able to pay it all back. Can we blame the Tories for all of this? Can we stand and point our fingers and start screaming red-faced at those sitting in the blue corner? All those contributors to the vital decisions that make up our so-called democracy? Well, since 2010, when Davy and Cleggy frolicked, fused in harmony, councils have had about 60% of their spending power cut. This was due to the deficit caused by the financial crash of 2008. As a result of this, Davy and Cleggy took all the local councils aside and said, "Psst, we've got a really great idea. We're going to let you be a bit more adventurous and thrill-seeking. Why don't you raise your own funds through dodgy investments? We're going to help you do that." How? Well, there's something called the Audit Commission, which we use to check on your finances. Well, we're going to do away with all that hogwash and leave you to delegate all your money to fraudsters and con artists. How's that sound? Happy days, yeah? Well, it didn't quite work out the way they wanted, did it? Roughly about the same time all this underhand nonsense was going on, main services expected from council started to sharply spiral. I mean, through the roof, taking the tiles and shingles off with it. Social care went on the increase, with an ageing population living a lot longer than expected. Social care went on the increase, with disabled people living a lot longer than expected. Social care went on the increase, with working age sickness escalating. We all started supping from the veritable fountain of youth and refused to die. The blooming cheek of it all. It had all become something of a damned inconvenience. Add to all this a huge rise in population numbers since 2010. London's grown by about 900,000 people, 11.2% as an example. It all became too much for everyone. As a result of all this, the government has decided to budget £64 billion for councils in 2024 to 25. But these are predictions and figures relying on a 5% council tax rise and a slight growth for central funding for 3% rise to, wait for it, 4%. This prompted 40 Tory MPs to sign a letter. Oh, don't you just love a signed letter? To Rishi Sunak asking for more central funding. Please, sir, can I have some more? To council so as to stop cuts to services. Rishi, bless his cotton socks, said he'd try to scrape together 600 million. Nowhere near enough. Come on, mate, you used to run a hedge fund. You should know that. What it all boils down to is the fact that none of the main parties has even a Scooby on how to solve this problem. How to bail out and help out councils up and down this fair nation of ours. A councillor from Yorkshire has said that they're hoping for a solution in the next general election, where, if they win, maybe Keir Starmer, or whoever it is running the Labour showboat, will be a tad more free-handed with the dosh. The only problem with that is they'll all face the same strapped-for-cash woodenness as the Tories. In fact, Angela Rayner herself has said they face a long slog, not a magic wand, to fix the whole blooming mess. This ties in with Labour councillors tipping off the fact that Labour's plan to sort out a fair wage deal for carers within its first 100 days in office could spell doom for other councils because they have to increase carer wages. How's that for a helping hand? With regard to the government's levelling up scheme, which became of prime concern in 2019, it seems as if local councils weren't in any shape or form a part of it. They were not part of the levelling up scheme. Of course, Michael Gove, the head honcho of this proposition, has suggested that the amount of grief and sterility experienced by local councils is a gross exaggeration. Now there's a surprise. What's more, Gove has threatened to hand out penalties to any council that allows its staff to reduce their working hours to 4 days a week, and has revealed plans or reviled any plans for any council to include equality, diversity or inclusion programs called EDI programs. According to a local government insider, he suggested that Gove is likely to let councils go bankrupt. Otherwise, it looks more like a national problem rather than something you can blame on individual council leadership. The destruction of councils affects everyone and anyone, all connected to inadequate policy making, council tax and a splintered social care model. The NHS is lumbered with staff shortages, 1 in 10 jobs vacant. We have hospitals literally coming apart at the seams, patients suffering to the extent they're either sitting in A&E for 12 hours waiting to be seen, in one case waiting the same length of time for X-ray results, and faulty equipment putting people's lives at risk. As a country, we now have the highest levels of long-term sickness, 2.8 million people, with a system so battered and tattered and frayed that we can't encourage anyone back into the workplace. Police fail to solve 90% of crimes, and the best of broken British to any poor sod who gets thrown into a courtroom or, heavens forbid, a blooming prison. A lousy funding system knocks all thought of applying to universities out the most clued up brains, with domestic tuition fees capped at $9,250 a year since 2017. Nobody can swim in our rivers due to corrupt water companies pumping sewage into them while still pumping up our water bills. You can wait years for a letter to be delivered to your door from the Royal Mail, even when it's someone else's. Energy firms rip us off. Train services are so blooming dismal, they almost run backwards. And while we all struggle with these trials and tribulations, with crumbling buildings and broken street lamps and parks and libraries closing down and abandoned cafes and dead bodies lying on slabs because nobody can afford to bury them, while all this happens, shareholders and, believe it or not, foreign governments, EDF Energy is French owned, and Avanti, one of our worst train services, is part owned by the Italian state, they all lounge back and fan themselves with thick wads of money. So, next time you're stuck for a bus, or waiting for a train, or have nowhere to take your kids on a weekend, or can't even borrow a book to read, bang out a salute to the old blooming lot of them. I've been Del McCamley, and this has been Would You Adam and Eve It? Don't be shy, tune in for next time. See ya!
Thanks for listening to an Echoes Hue audio productions project. Smooth, sweet sounds. Keep up to date with content from Echoes Hue Audio Productions by following us on TikTok, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget to follow, like and comment. Would You Adam and Eve It is written and presented by Del McCamley. The podcast is directed and produced by J.S. Mensah. Our theme music is by Oleg Mazur.